handwriting on the wall. Americans were increasingly diverging politically between red and blue states, but shared so much of everything else, from where they went to college, to what friends they had, to the goals they had in life, even to small things like the entertainment that they enjoyed. This could not be stable. It could not last. So I began a research project to find the answers. After a guest lecture I attended on the progressives, I took the elevator to the 4th floor of the library where I had been told to meet the archivist. I was searching for the source of a quote the lecturer had used. It included the word plasticity. Since I didn't have the exact citation, I asked to see every issue of the New Republic published between its founding in about 1914 and 1940. I expected a box of microfiche film. The archivist brought 4 stacks of magazines tied together with twine and many more in cardboard boxes. They shed clouds of dust on the table. This was going to take a while, but I had a plan that should shorten things a bit. I planned to look at the table of contents for each issue on the topic of education and scan the articles with a portable scanner. I soon realized that education appeared in nearly every issue, and often as a centerpiece. John Dewey, father of modern progressive education, wrote often, but the editorial board was almost as active and revealing about their intent. This was the first clue that progressives were far more interested in K-12 education than I thought. I later found out they essentially invented it, at least as we know it today. The sun went down outside unbeknownst to me. As I worked my way back to the elevators, a sign jutted out from a row of shelves simply labeled Education. All day I had just been feet from this section. I was sure some academic must have already researched this topic, if only I could find it. I glanced at the clock and saw that I had 15 minutes before closing. I walked into the aisle. The section labeled Educational History drew my attention. As I pulled book after book off the shelf, I looked at the author's bios. Educational Doctorate, U.S. Department of Education, Professor of Education. Clearly, progressive educators were the ones writing about education's history. I took a few out. There wasn't much new in what I quickly fanned through. It seemed analogous to reading the story of the Bolshevik Revolution as told by Lenin. But I had been avoiding the thickest books on the shelf, 3 of them. Finally, I opened the first of 3 thick volumes of Lawrence Kremen's American Education. Kremen was an historian. One of the volumes had a seal on the desk cover that read Pulitzer Prize. His bio said he was at Columbia University. This sounded promising. A quick internet search revealed that his revelations about the history of American education made progressive educators uneasy. Yet rarely had I read such a well-sourced and thorough history of anything. Why was the educational establishment critical of Kremen's work? Somewhere in the 2nd volume, Kremen landed on the missing center around which all of those thinkers I had read thus far had orbited. You find the quote in Chapter 5 of this book. My research on the progressives snapped into alignment. I'd been looking for what the progressives did. I wanted to know how they informed the plasticity of the child. I had not imagined that they simply removed an ingredient, nor did I imagine that any ingredient could possibly have been that significant. Kremen used an unusual word, paideia. I went on to research this word, and it opened a narrative that cast light into nearly every corner of our current situation. Research led me to scholarship on ancient Rome and Greece, America's founding, the changes to Christianity in the 19th century, and many more dusty library corners. I read another 3-volume set by Harvard scholar Werner Jaeger, describing one single word, paideia. The reason for the discord in the lives of Americans and America's cultural decline came into view. Early in 2020, I was introduced to Pete Hegseth. In my work for the Association of Classical Christian Schools, I'm often asked education-related questions by the media. Pete was the first member of the media to actually take up a shovel and dig for answers. He asked more and more questions. I'd sent him a few chapters of a draft manuscript I'd written to provide him with in-depth answers. In the months that followed, Pete would call and say, "Do you really mean that?" It usually had something to do with America's founders or some aha moment.